I'm Lisa Dahl, health and well-being coach, and welcome to Getting Healthy Without Rules. This show is about understanding the things that impact your wellness and finding ways to improve it. This show supports a non-diet, no-rule approach to health and wellness. Health and wellness is a moving target, and we all have different needs and opportunities to improve it. This allows you to make the best choice with the information that you have right now, and it helps you to be present, flexible, and resilient. In addition, I support you from shifting from judgment to curiosity and offering yourself self-compassion. It's time that we are all a little bit kinder to ourselves. In this show, we have talked about different aspects that impact our health and how so many of them are interconnected. Stress, we all feel it. It is one of the major aspects of our life that impacts our physical, mental, and emotional health. It can affect our relationship with ourselves, how we care for ourselves, how we eat, how we sleep, how we navigate our day. One of the causes of stress is having more to do than you can handle. I'm curious, how many times have you said, I just don't have the capacity to do one more thing? As a health and wellness coach, I know I'm supposed to do it and know all the things. And I have to say, lately, that line, I don't have the capacity to do one more thing, seems to be coming out of my mouth more often than not. In today's episode, we dive deeper into stress and mindfulness. We will talk about the impact of chronic stress on our physical health, the power of mindfulness and how it can help you to manage stress, common challenges with integrating mindfulness into our daily lives and how to overcome them, and examples of mindfulness practices that we can use today. Be sure to stay until the end for today's practice about and how to learn the mindful pause. Today, I am privileged to introduce you to my colleague, Bev Mazza. Beverly Mazza is a registered nurse, certified Whole Health Educator, health coach, and patient advocate. Combining her nursing expertise with mindfulness and holistic health, Bev helps clients relieve stress so they can feel calmer and fully capable of making lifestyle shifts for a happier and healthier life. As the founder of Purely Present Health and creator of the Stress Better Habit Solution coaching program, she guides clients through health behavior changes with kindness, compassion, and clarity. As soon as I met Bev, I knew that we were aligned in our approach to health and wellness. Bev, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here with you this morning.
So we are going to dig into all things stress because, as I said earlier, we are all feeling it at some time. At some point, nobody is absolved from that feeling or of emotion. Stress is such a common word, often used as a catch-all for emotions such as worry, anxiety, fear, sadness, or feeling overwhelmed. Tell us, what exactly is stress and why do we feel it?
My favorite topic. I'm really excited to talk about this today. So stress really is those physical and emotional sensations that we feel when we're meeting life's challenges. And there's a lot of them in our day-to-day. We have our kind of short-term stressors, and then we have a lot of these long-term stressors. So when we talk about stress and what we're feeling, what we're thinking, I like to kind of educate on what the actual stress response system is. So what's happening, when we are faced with something, and that could be something, a real threat that's physically in front of us, or that could be a thought or an emotion. And the thing is, the body doesn't know the difference. It's still going to kind of kick off a series of physiological responses. They're going to happen either way. So this is a real threat in front of you or something you're thinking about or worrying about. And a few things are going to happen. Your body's going to start to send messages and send out a bunch of hormones that are cause changes in your body. So it's going to be a lot of those familiar sensations that we felt. So sort of that initial rush as our adrenal glands are releasing adrenaline, that short-acting stress hormone. So that might just that woo sensation. I feel it, heart rate increases, blood pressure increases. As that continues to go on, our actual blood sugar is going to go up because the liver is basically going to try to give us energy to move. We're trying to get away from that threat. We're going to be breathing faster. Our pupils are actually going to open up wide so we can really see what's going on because physiologically your body is, running from that tiger, right? This is a well-adapted response that the body is very well skilled in doing to get you to safety. And on the flip side of that, it says, well, what do I not have to really do right now? So if I'm running from that tiger, I need to get to safety. Well, I don't have to worry about digesting my food, right? So this is where we see that impact of issues on our GI system when we're really stressed out. It's also thinking, well, my immune system, that's fantastic, but I don't need to worry about that right now. Again, that's not needed for this immediate survival. And also seeing impacts on fertility and reproductive health as well. So those are really those three systems that sort of get downgraded when we're in a stress response, because the body is trying to get to safety with good reason. But it can be maladapted, as we know, when we're feeling like that all the time.
So that's often referred to as the fight or flight response. So that's something that the everyday knowledge, most people don't really understand the multiple layers of what's happening within our system.
Right.
And, having just a stressful week as you're talking and going, okay, I feel that. Yep. And learning the tools, and we're going to get to those as we continue the conversation. What is the difference between stress, chronic stress, and burnout? Because those are three words that are, again, thrown around without often people understanding the full differentiation between them.
So I like to always talk about stress as a continuum, right? So we can kind of slide back and forth along the scale. So we talk about stress, and we want to see an acute stress. So that could be somebody cutting you off in traffic, right? Just stressful, or sitting in traffic. It could be an event coming up, say coming in for an interview or something
How's
like
that stress level?
Yeah. An acute stressful event that is going to pass. And then, your body might come back into a more restorative state, into that parasympathetic state, which is sort of contrasting with the sympathetic, our rest and digest. It's where we really want to be hanging out most of the time. Chronic stress can be these ongoing challenges that we're facing. And these might be things that, you may have some control over, you may not have. We can't remove stress from our life. So I'm not a fan of saying get stress-free. I never talk to people about that. I don't think that exists. It's really about how do we manage our stress? How do we relieve stress? But we're in that state of chronic stress. Again, the body has gone through that acute response system, but it's also still kicking out cortisol, because cortisol is that long-acting hormone. So when it's still feeling threatened, it's going to be kind of pumping this out. And it's not that cortisol is a bad thing. We need cortisol. It's involved in many body functions. But when we can't kind of flip that switch off and go back into a parasympathetic state, we're going to have some detrimental effects across all of our body systems. And that will kind of continue on and on. And then what happens as that goes on, and if there's not an intervention to support the body to come back into a more relaxed, restorative state, we get to the end of the spectrum, which is burnout. And really what burnout is the body's protective mechanism. It's basically saying, I think it's giving you this message of, I've tried, I've supported you, I'm pumping out this stress hormone, I'm done. And you know what? For your sake, for restoration, I'm shutting it down. So it takes cortisol and it says, I'm shutting this down, and we're gonna really need to restore. So with that, then we start seeing a lot of feelings of hopelessness, helplessness, depression, can really get to that, apathy, loss of interest in activities. So really kind of that further end of that spectrum.
It's a full body response.
Yes.
It's emotional, physical, and mental. And they all work together to be able to restore, to get back to that homeostasis place. And it takes time. There's no quick fix.
Absolutely not.
How does chronic stress affect our physical health, and what are some of the long-term consequences when it's unmanaged? Because people think, we have to plow through it. I've got this. I've got too many responsibilities. I don't have time to make that shift. Maybe you don't have a choice.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love that you say that. And I like to definitely talk to my patients about this a lot when they're like, I'm too busy to kind of care about the stress. And I'm like, do you hear what you're saying? This is the exact time where we really need to care about this. And really when it comes to stress, there is no, illness, disease, chronic condition that we have that's not going to be impacted by stress. So whatever it is that anyone is facing, having a regular stress management practice is only going to support whichever body system potentially is compromised, whatever you're struggling with your health. Obviously, now that we understand what's going on with the body and that sympathetic response, it's not a wonder why this is often linked to issues in our cardiovascular health, because ultimately, we're talking about high blood pressure, high heart rate, inflammation inflammation in the body, which is wear and tear on our whole vascular system. So that's really putting us at risk for things like atherosclerosis, so that buildup in the vessels of the cardiac system. Obviously talking about the high blood pressure, risk for stroke, heart attack, all of that stuff has definitely been linked to stress. Digestive system, also mentioning that. So with stress, we see things a lot with not only with having issues around like IBS, diarrhea, constipation, but also just in general, the body not being able to actually extract the nutrients it needs from the foods that we eat. So even if we're eating very well, it might be if we have a compromised gut, that's going to really have an impact on how we're actually able to utilize those ingredients and create the energy that we need as well. A lot of issues around sleep, insomnia, which makes a lot of sense. When we're really stressed, it's hard to relax. Oftentimes, when I speak to people, sometimes when they put their head down on the pillow at night is the first time that they've really kind of settled and dropped into the day. So it's a wonderful time for your mind to just get really busy
activated.
And just everywhere. And for some people, that's when they're trying to go to sleep. For some people, that's 2 a.m. So that can be definitely a profound consequence. And as we know, sleep is such a foundational health behavior. Then oftentimes when that's offset, that can offset so many other aspects of your health. Back to our friend cortisol. Cortisol is supposed to naturally rise in the morning, prepare us for our day. And then over the course of the day, it goes down and it switches off with melatonin, which is actually a hormone that helps us sort of rest down and power down. So you can imagine the body gets a little confused if the cortisol is pumping and pumping. Right. The sleep-wake cycle can be really dysregulated, and that's a big issue.
And I've had a sleep expert on, and just knowing from my own experience, with working personally and professionally, that when, talking about sleep, people think that, the problem is I can't sleep, and that the problem is at midnight, when the problem is really all the hours leading up to it. And going back to the stress that it's our thoughts. And we can't see it, other people can't see it. And therefore, it's like that silent thing that creeps into our lives and takes over.
Absolutely.
Why is it important to understand and address the underlying emotions that are causing us discomfort? Because when I started, I said, we have these bucket terms. I'm stressed. That doesn't really tell us what's going on. What does it mean to kind of dig below that to understand what's actually happening?
Yeah, so I think being you're a health professional, wellness professional, is we all know that our emotions are stored within our body. So wherever that be, that can land in different places for different people. But I think people know, in general, you're feeling stressed, you're gonna have physical sensations with that. Some might be more obvious. You might be like, my shoulders are really up high, or I'm clenching my jaw. Some might be more subtle where you don't really recognize that you're breathing really shallow, and that's causing a lot of kind of constriction here. So when we have all of these emotions and we're not necessarily tapped into understanding what's going on with them and paying attention to those physical sensations, we can really miss that opportunity, I think, to kind of intervene and start supporting our body at an earlier state before we get down the road to burnout. Because unless we start really kind of tackling these thoughts and these emotions, they're not going to go anywhere. But they can land sometimes within the body, and then we can kind of lose awareness and have a detachment from them. And maybe not even recognize at that point that, wow, this really was stress as that driver. And now, I'm still trying to plow through it, but it's still with me and I'm still not managing it.
How hard is it to help your clients be more particular about what that stress is? Defining whether it's worry, anxiety, loneliness, trying to dig into the other words and staying out of that bucket to help them connect more, to be able to create that awareness of what's going on. Do you find that to be a challenge, or do you find that your clients are like, oh, I know exactly what it is?
I think people, once given the opportunity to talk about it, and I think have permission to talk about what is stress, and it's different from person to person. And also having people realize that stress is a lot of different things, whether it is, relationships, your workplace, the environment that you're in, the food that you're eating, the toxins you're exposed to. Stress, there's a lot within that. And not everyone always sees it like that. A lot of times they see it as stress as this sort of like nuisance of something that's happening to me. But there's also stress, that maybe we can't relieve. Like maybe you're a caregiver, there's things like this that are going to be part of your life. So I think that permission to talk about it, people realize what is bothering them and kind of digging a little bit deeper. Well, what about that is difficult for you? And let's explore why this is difficult and then what would make this easier for you. But
permission in that space to talk without judgment and knowing that you are not alone in what you are experiencing. Mindfulness has become very popular today, and we often are told to, just go practice mindfulness. What does that really mean?
Yes. Big buzzword.
Yeah, it's like the bucket words,
yes.
and it's the common word today. Tell us what it really means in your words and how you work with your clients with that.
Yeah, so mindfulness to me is like that moment-to-moment, non-judgmental awareness of our thoughts, our emotions, and our behaviors. So it's like paying attention on purpose, moment to moment, but doing it through a non-judgmental approach, which is where a lot of times I think we get tripped up in, even if people are like, okay, I'm paying attention to what I'm doing in right now, but it's like, are you judging it?
But there's that but.
Yes. So that's sort of that differentiator that I think is kind of a new and kind of fresh perspective than how we might typically kind of tune into ourselves, if we're doing that at all. A lot of times we're so busy, as I said, like you get to the end of the day and then you're like, oh, what happened today? Where am I? My physical body, emotionally, where am I?
Because I use mindfulness a lot with my clients for mindful eating. And what they're noticing, which I always laugh, is, we'll do a weekly check-in coaching call. And they'll say, well, all I did this week was notice. Like, that's the prize, is creating that awareness and being able to accept the fact that it is not perfect. And that when you notice that you're distracted and bringing yourself back into that space, that is part of the practice.
Absolutely. That's that strengthening. As I say, the more your mind is
muscle.
wandering off, it's that muscle memory to coming back. That's really like where we're building up that practice.
What do you find to be the biggest benefits of mindfulness? I know there's a lot.
Goodness. I mean, everything. I think from, the nurse in me likes to speak to a lot of sort of the physical benefits and the research that's being conducted on that. A lot sort of, within the cardiovascular space, but of course across other health conditions as well. So I think it's a really exciting kind of intervention that people can bring in to various disease states or conditions they might be experiencing. From the emotional standpoint, I think a lot of people come at it as, yes, I want to be kind of stressed less, which again, is, stressing less is, good. We're not going to be without stress, but just sort of bringing it down and bringing ourselves kind of back into our bodies, physically feeling what's there, emotionally what's with us. And that self-compassion piece for me is really key, because we're not always very kind to ourselves. We're often the meanest voice going on. And for me, one of the things that I really gravitated with the mindfulness practice is sort of that permission and that self-compassion to recognize, like, wow, this is really difficult right now, and not trying to push it away. Or if you do encounter something and maybe, other people around you are just like, well, you shouldn't feel like that. And then you tell yourself, well, I shouldn't feel like that. And you're like, well, I do feel like that. And there's got to be a self-compassion piece, and like, that's okay. I can feel like this. I can go a little bit deeper and explore maybe like why I'm feeling like this and what does this mean? But just allowing whatever is. And that's what I love kind of coming to sit down, whether it's, in a formal meditation practice, is like, you're just bringing your whole self as it is, and whatever shows up for you, shows up for you. And you're kind of going to welcome it and always have the opportunity to kind of bring yourself back into your body, back into your breath, and just be in that present moment, because we are in the past most of the time, or we are somewhere out in the future.
Somewhere in between, except for being present.
Exactly.
And we often use the words, what would you say to your best friend? And it sounds so simple, and it's not easy. And we all experience that conflict of, are we being too easy on ourselves if we're self-compassionate? And what we're learning, and what the studies are showing, is that when you are more compassionate, you have the ability to not be filled with guilt and shame when things don't go so well, that it gives you more capacity to be able to go forward and to move into the future.
Absolutely. Completely agree with that.
How can mindfulness practices relieve stress and support healthy habit change, such as adopting a healthier way of eating? A subject we both share.
Yes, the mindful eating. I mean, I think with mindfulness, as we've just kind of talked about what it is, it's you're paying attention from moment to moment. So it really allows a nice opportunity to identify triggers that might be causing you potentially to eat a certain way. And, a chance to learn how to kind of respond and not react. So it's kind of inviting that pause, that space. What am I doing right now? What am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? And that can be really a powerful place to start making some changes in behavior. It's getting you off of autopilot. That's why I really love mindfulness, because you're kind of checking in that moment, as opposed to kind of blazing forward and doing things the way you've always done it.
Right. You refer to it as the mindful pause. I refer to it as the power. I call it the power of the pause.
Yep.
So we all kind of adopt our own language. In your experience as a nurse and a health coach, what are some of the most common obstacles that people face when trying to integrate mindfulness into their daily lives? And how do you help them overcome those challenges?
So I think a big thing is sort of our conception around what it is when we meditate. So people feeling like they're not doing it right. So that distractibility. So people get really irritated with that. They say, I tried meditation once. It doesn't work. I was thinking too much. So trying to kind of, banish those kind of barriers around thinking that when you sit down to meditate, it means that you're, blanking your mind out. And that might be some people's experiences. And there's obviously these different kind of levels of, where we go in our thoughts. But having thoughts during meditation doesn't make you a bad meditator at all. It's part of the experience. As we were talking about, as you notice those thoughts and bring your attention back into the moment, that's where that pull is, and that's when it's going to build up that muscle memory of keeping yourself in that present moment. And that could happen, 1,000 times in a meditation sit, and you're just noticing, thinking, and then being not judgmental of it. You might be, making your grocery list and then notice, okay, I need to come back into the present moment, come back into, your anchor of attention, whether that's your breath, your hand, the grasp of your hands. So definitely distractibility. People oftentimes saying that I'm just not the, quote, type of person that meditates. So that often is a nice moment to kind of just be like, well, what does that really mean? Or what is sort of your expectation of that type of person? Because what I've learned, definitely even through my nursing practice, through my own health coaching practices, there's not a type. I mean, these practices are open and available to everyone. And, if you were going to stereotype, quote unquote, the type of person that meditates, it's not really what you think. It's really a universal practice that can be adapted for everyone. So that's one of the particular reasons I really love it.
Yeah, and it's a practice that's used all over the world. Anybody, anytime, any place can take that moment to be able to just center themselves. One of the things that I often share with my clients when we're talking about that distractibility is to gently think of a child who has wandered off, and to, you want to just bring them calmly back into that space. How do you recenter yourself so that you are not going with judgment? You don't just want to yank the kid back and say, sit. Yes. Maybe we're all guilty at some point of that if you're a parent. Yep. But in general, I try to share that analogy of just gently taking that child's hand, bringing them back and helping them to recenter, refocus. And that's how we want to be able to help our clients, patients come back into that practice. What advice do you have for someone interested? Let me start over. What advice do you have for someone interested in incorporating mindfulness practices into their life but doesn't know where to start?
Yeah, so this could go back to some of the challenges that people are facing. So that distractibility. I'm not the type of person that meditates. The other one I would add in there is time, which is I don't have time to do this. So that's one I like to kind of start with often, because it doesn't have to take a lot of time. And yes, you can decide I'm going to sit on my meditation cushion for 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour or longer. And that's a fantastic practice to do, but you don't have to start there, and you might never get to there either. So short meditation practices are completely okay. I feel like a lot of times, I one time had a patient say to me like, oh, you're giving me permission to not do this for a really long time. I was like, you don't need my permission, but yes. So really simple practices, I think breathing practices can be really grounding for people. So just when you are kind of taking a few moments to notice how you're breathing. So we oftentimes breathe very shallow, so in our upper chest area, as opposed to a more relaxing belly breath. So that sometimes just placing like your hand on your belly and just noting breathing. Some people love to do that when they're sitting in traffic. That can be really helpful as well. But just noticing, so just really brief breathing practices. And when we actually breathe deeply, we are signaling to our body that we're safe. Because when you think about it, when we are running from that tiger, we're trying, our lungs are pumping, we're trying to get as much oxygen flowing. So when we actually start breathing deeply from the belly, we're sending a signal to the brain that we're safe. So that can be a really nice way to reset in a short period of time. The opportunity to, if you do want to sit in a formal meditation practice, that it can be however long or as short as you like. I mean, it could be 2 minutes if you want to sit down and do that and just be with your thoughts. Or you can use supportive technology like an app and set a timer for yourself. You can explore different, whether you like music, whether you want it guided, not guided.
There's something for everybody.
Yes, tones of voice by topic. Now you can go on an app and choose, something for sleep support, anxiety support, being at work stress support. There's a little bit of everything. So just there's so many resources out there that people can start experimenting with.
You hit on something that I find really interesting, that permission. Do we need to actually get a prescription that says meditate 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever it is, because we all want to do the right things. My doctor said, or my nurse practitioner said, do this.
Right.
What a difference it would be to be able to say, here's your prescription. You have the ability to learn to be the expert on yourself and to take care of yourself. We just need to shift how we think of fixing and more into healing and taking those slower steps.
I love that, Lisa. I think that's just so important to have that conversation with everybody. As I always say, regardless of what's going on in your physical health, having that conversation around stress and how you're managing that would be so beneficial to everybody if we really prioritized, how are we supporting ourselves when it comes to managing our stress.
Yeah, everything is interconnected. As I state in the beginning of the show, that it is not just about our movement. It's not just about what we're eating. And stress is one of those things that is just a lightning bolt in every direction in our systems. And to have those skills is so powerful to be able to show up and have that hope and optimism that keeps us going and happy. Before we talk about this week's practice, are there any words of wisdom that you would like to share that we haven't touched upon today?
We've covered a lot of good things. I think just bringing back that point of, don't just think of stress as this nuisance. Think of it as a chance to really start to support your health, your mind, your body, and that it needs to be a priority. Life is only getting more stressful. We have so many things coming at us from every different direction. And instead of, I think, stress management being looked at as sort of like a self-indulgent practice, or I'm too weak, or, I can't cope, and having kind of those negative feelings around it, it's a place of empowerment to know that this is life. Life is stressful, and I have these tools that I can use to support my body on a day-to-day basis throughout the day, not waiting till I hit sort of that crisis point. Because it's really when we get into a way of practicing this and we have tools that are supportive to us and that we feel good about using, when we do have those crisis events, which we all are going to have, we're going to have a stronger foundation. We're going to have more stress resilience, and we're going to be able to pull from that. And that's so incredibly important.
Yes, it's, creating that awareness and then knowing what tools in your toolbox to pull out to be able to take care of yourself and without letting it get to that urgent spot. And even when we're there, we still have the ability to have those tools to bring ourselves back into a calmer state.
Yes.
I know you have a mindfulness practice today, and I would love for you to take us through it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Great.
I'll do a little bit of a abbreviated one for the sake of time. Just want to offer to everybody the opportunity to practice what I call the mindful pause. So this is something really nice you can do as a beginner practice, but even if you have more experience, it can still be a really helpful framework to keep mindfulness kind of at the top of your mind throughout the day. So simply what we're going to do is we're going to choose 3 times throughout the day where you're going to drop in and do the mindful pause. So what can be really supportive for you to actually set an alert on your phone as you would any event that you were scheduling, or you can tie it to a behavior that you do 3 times a day. So for some people, this might be kind of pairing it with eating 3 meals a day, if that's part of your regular eating practice. So choose some time, set a reminder for 3 times. And what's going to happen is once that timer goes off, or potentially if you're sitting down for your meal, you're going to drop in. So you're going to practice and take 5 deep breaths. And so in talking you through this, you're going to keep in mind kind of just dropping into this, noticing where you feel the breath most, and trying to bring that breath deeper into your belly. Placing a hand on your belly can be really supportive so you can actually feel that sensation. And you're going to take yourself through a cycle of 5 breaths. And after that, you're going to broaden your awareness. So you're going to just notice, what am I thinking right now? How am I feeling right now? What am I noticing in my body? So really tapping into what physical sensations are there for me. So this can be a nice opportunity to notice if you're holding particular tension in any areas of your body, and see if you can just create a little bit more space as you're doing this. Once you've completed that and gone through, take in your surroundings. So what is around you right now? What are you hearing? What are you seeing? The colors around you, the textures around you. Just really taking in all that is in your environment. After you've done that broader awareness, drop back into your body, drop back into your breath. You can do another series of 3 to 5 breaths, and then just simply go back to what you were doing. So very simple, but really helps you kind of drop into that moment and giving you that opportunity to do that 3 times a day. You're welcome to do it more, but that can just be a really nice introductory practice that's not requiring much time on your part and isn't kind of requiring you to sit down on a meditation cushion if you feel any resistance to that. But this is a really nice way to bring in a daily mindfulness practice. And I think this is really accessible to everyone, Lisa.
Yeah, no, it's perfect. And just even listening to you go through the instructions is just such a calming presence and really helps. I can just feel my stress reducing a little bit. And that brings me to something that you shared with me the other day that you are offering on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis. Tell me a little bit about that and how they can learn about your meditation practice that you're offering.
Really excited. So with Purely Present Health, I wanted to kind of offer up to my community an opportunity to practice mindfulness meditation together. So I've launched bi-weekly, so every other Tuesday from 7 to 7:30, we meet on Zoom for 30 minutes. So those 15 minutes of a lightly guided meditation followed by 15 minutes of reflection, discussion, going a little bit deeper on any mindfulness or meditation topics, and just kind of offering that as a resource as, one-time registration. After that, you can choose to come or not come. It's always available to you, and people can just drop in and just kind of be there and sit and practice and learn about some foundational mindfulness practices, and there's no experience needed for it. So
that's great. I mean, it's a tool you can use, and it's easy and it's available and it's free, which is even better. And you also have a Fuel Your Busy Life 7 days of delicious recipes and healthy eating tips.
Yes.
So I will put those in the show notes so that people know how to find you and access your information and expertise.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for being my guest today. And today we have learned about stress, how it can impact our wellness, and how mindfulness can be a tool for managing stress. If you want to continue the conversation, please join me for my monthly free office hours and conversations. And I would love if you would start sending in your questions, sharing what your takeaways, what you are learning, so that I can be able to provide the best information that you need right now. You can find all my information on my website at lisadahlwellness.com, and be sure to tune in next time for Getting Healthy Without Rules.